Hey, this is Jeremy for 10xyourgigs.com, and I just got done. I'm actually driving on my way home. I just got done doing a couple of gigs up in Minnesota. I did 2 back-to-back 90-minute sets, which is not the typical thing that you see a comedian do. I mean, there's a lot of comedians that do long sets. I've seen that before, one-man shows, 90-minute shows. I've even heard of, guys like Dave Chappelle going on for 6 hours. I think Dane Cook did, a 10-hour show one time or something like that. But typically what you see in the stand-up comedy world is a show that is put together by a booker or an agency, and you're going to have the headliner do about 50 to 60 minutes, and then you're going to have an opening act do anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes to make up the 90-minute show. What I do is I just do the full 90 minutes myself, cut out the opener, cut out the booker, keep all the money. And that's not a typical thing that you see. My thought on this is because it's just not the traditional way things are done. It's there's a certain pattern, there's a certain style of show that gets put together, and it's just what's traditional, and it just stays that way. And most comedians will just kind of accept that that's how it is, that you need to go through a booking agent in order to get your gig, and then you follow this formula of a 30-minute opening act or feature act and a 50 to 60-minute headliner. So what I want to talk to you about today is that the difference in that dynamic. I want to talk to you today about the difference between what is right versus what seems right. Some of the biggest mistakes I've made in my show business career and in life in general happened when I did what seemed right. So let me give you an example. For many, many years, I wrote and performed quote-unquote clean material. I didn't really get too truthful in my stand-up comedy. I didn't really try to make waves or offend anyone. And I didn't really resonate with anyone either. I had a very bland, vanilla, milquetoast kind of act that was easily forgettable. I didn't get very many gigs either, even though I was told by so many industry experts that to get work as a comic, you had to have a clean act. That was the only way. That the dirty comics didn't work. That you had to get the corporate gigs. That's what paid well. But once I decided to go for broke and just be myself, writing the kind of material that was truthful and revealing, speaking openly and honestly about my life, and not worrying about the specific words I used or if I offended anyone, that's when things started to happen. And sure, I pissed off a few people, but there'll always be naysayers, and the way I see it, fuck them if they can't take a joke. But being myself to the hilt is what sets me apart from everyone else. It's natural. It's naturally going to happen that way because everybody is unique. So you want to be yourself to the hilt, whatever that means and whatever it is that you do. And that was the spark that has led to a constantly flowing stream of gigs, merchandise sales, and a growing fan base. You see, a lot of times the rules we live by don't really make sense. They can be pretty arbitrary, and they tend to obscure the path to success. And what I think is worse is the rules are rarely questioned. I'll give you another example. Many bookers and agents in the comedy world will say that you can't perform more than twice a year in a given geographic market. Now, While there's something to be said for the value of scarcity when it comes to event promotion, just to assume that you're oversaturating the market by performing more than twice a year is arbitrary nonsense. In fact, I would say that it goes against the very idea of creating top-of-mind awareness with your fan base. I once did a 3 consecutive night run in 3 different places in the Quad Cities in my home state of Iowa. And each night, the crowd grew because of word of mouth. And I did another run like that 6 months later and had even bigger crowds. So that was 6 times in 6 months that I performed in the same geographic market. And not only did I not get diminishing results, each show was more successful than the next. You see, many times we don't even bother to think about the why behind the rule, whether it's applicable in a particular situation or not, and whether the rule really needs to be followed or adhered to. So we wind up just blindly following the rules. And this unwavering, unquestioning following of the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, it typically results in unintended consequences and many times personal failure. You see this all over the place. Legal matters, the economy, academics, your career. Especially you see it in show business a lot. And when we do things just because of tradition or to follow the status quo, it's what's been done before and it's not questioned. What I propose is that you break all the rules, multiply your gigs exponentially by ignoring, actually better yet, destroying the status quo. Following the status quo is deadly to a career in show business. Ask yourself, are you the type of performer that likes to follow rules and regulations and do what other people tell you? Or are you the type of performer that if you know something's right or will work, that you just go with it regardless of what the status quo would say? I think that's what an artist is. Someone that just does what they feel from the heart regardless of what the status quo would say. And status quo says, do what the bookers, talent agents, club owners, event coordinators, and show managers tell you to do. To do otherwise is to bite the hand that feeds you. In my experience, bookers, talent agents, club owners, event coordinators, show managers, industry people, they all have their own unique set of rules. If they're successful in show business, it's probably because at some point they broke the rules. They decided to forge their own path and not follow the status quo. Status quo says, don't bother people. The show business is a business of getting attention. You must interrupt people. You must bother people. They are not just naturally, organically going to seek you out. And once you have their attention, if you're offering good value and service and you're entertaining and you brighten their day because you gave them some entertainment value, it's not a bother. They will appreciate it. Status quo says, follow the herd. Really? Well, the masses are asses. We've all heard that phrase before. When most people are going one way, I say go the opposite. Set yourself apart. Do what most don't. Most people are fat, stupid, or lazy. They wouldn't do anything at all. They are spectators of life, not players. If you want to find success in show business, don't sit around watching others get successful. Get in the game yourself and forge your own path to victory. The status quo says no means no. Well, maybe if you're on a date, but not in show business, quite often no means not right now. If you continue to follow up by delivering value and results, and they still don't want to work with you, then it is probably better to move on because you're most likely dealing with a blockhead. The status quo says, don't look bad. Well, all I got to say about that is, if you're not willing to make an ass of yourself, then you should probably get out of this business right now. It's called show business. It's not called look cool business. Avoiding looking bad is a paralyzing fear that inhibits success. Status quo says, be nice, don't be rude, it's important what other people think about you. Well, you don't want to be a completely cold-hearted, careless, evil monster. But worrying about what other people think about you is a tremendous waste of time. You'll always have critics no matter what you do. Rise above it. Worry about fulfilling your destiny of success in show business, even if sometimes that means being what others would perceive as rude. I think it's better to be successful and rude than a polite failure. Assholes get things done. Empathetic people sit around and watch Oprah. Status quo says everybody should like you. And it's true, you want to build a big fan base, loyal followers. There's a lot of value in that. But if you try to be all things to all people, you'll wind up being nothing to nobody. Bill Cosby even said something. It was like he had a quote, I don't know what the secret to success is, but the key to failure is trying to please everybody. That was Bill Cosby. Status quo says haters are bad. Well, if you want success in show business, you better have some haters. The more haters you have, the more you're going to resonate with your supporters. The more haters you have, the more this country will rain riches on you. If you watch that movie Private Parts about Howard Stern, and the manager of the radio station is freaking out, Pig Vomit is freaking out, and he wants to find out what the public is saying about the Stern show, and the guy says, the average Stern show listener the average Howard Stern fan listens for an hour and a half. The average Howard Stern hater listens for 3 hours. They both gave the same reason, because they want to see what he's going to say next. You got to have some haters. Status quo says conform to the already established system. That system was designed by those in authority and power simply so they could retain their authority. If you want authority and power, you got to create your own system. That means breaking some rules. That means forging your own path, doing what others won't or don't do because they're ingrained and calcified in tradition and habit. Status quo says there's only so many gigs available. There is an abundance of gigs available. There's only a scarcity in thinking, in creativity, in ambition, and drive to get those gigs. Get creative. Think outside the box. See what isn't there. Do what others won't do. And you will experience an abundance of gigs for yourself. Status quo says, if you're not famous, you're not successful. That's total horseshit. Do you realize how many famous people are broke, suffering from addictions, completely unhealthy, have dysfunctional relationships? Just watch Celebrity Rehab, or True Hollywood Story, or TMZ. Think of all the celebrity scandals and gossip that make the cover of magazines and news headlines. Don't get me wrong, being a celebrity is very valuable. But fame does not equal success. Status quo says, get your head out of the clouds and get a real job. Because, nobody ever gets laid off or downsized from their real job, right? There's all kinds of security in just being a 9-to-5 member of the 9-to-5 workforce. Everybody always gets raises that keep up with the cost of living and inflation. A real job means security, right? Well, to me, a real job, working 9 to 5, it's like jail. A situation like that would keep me imprisoned from the freedom of pursuing my own life's purpose, spending every day engaged in my unique abilities. I'd be working for someone else, making money for somebody else. If I'd followed this BS of getting my head out of the clouds and getting a real job, I'd be a miserable failure in life. I certainly wouldn't have performed over 2,000 shows in the last 10 years. I wouldn't have 2 movies out. I wouldn't have a weekly radio segment. And worse yet, I'd be setting a bad example for my kids. Status quo says life is a zero-sum game. If someone gets ahead in life, it was at the expense of others. Again, this ignores the fact that there's an abundance of opportunity in this world. The reality is the only way to truly get ahead in life is by adding value to others' life. Life takes from the takers and gives to the givers. Money earned ethically is a byproduct of value creation. So if you're making money, it doesn't mean it came at the expense of someone else. Chances are you making money or you getting ahead in life came at the added value to someone else. Status quo says only those who are lucky find success. Well, the truth is, successful people who forge their own path understand the secret that luck can be manufactured. The more you engage in your unique abilities, use your talents, and explore and develop your potential, the luckier you will be. Opportunities will materialize in front of you almost like magic. There are certain principles that inevitably lead to success. So in reality, those who are successful get lucky. Status quo says, just get your name out there and hope and pray and cross your fingers, let the chips fall where they may, and maybe it will work out and you'll get more bookings. No. There are definitely systems that can be predictable and consistently lead to getting gigs. You can get access to my system in full detail at www.10xyourgigs.com. But even if you don't use my system, you can create your own or find someone else with a gig getting system to model, some sort of already designed a successful business model. Even not having a system is a system. But just to hope and pray that you'll get gigs is bad news. It's bad news. Don't fall for that myth that the Main Street perpetuates. So what I'm saying is, instead of following what seems right because of what status quo or mainstream society says, follow what is right, and you'll experience very different results. I encourage you to think for yourself. Make your own decisions. If you're facing obstacles when you're trying to get gigs, ask yourself if you've just been blindly or automatically following the status quo, or if you're truly acting as an independent entertainment entrepreneur by taking risks, innovating new paths to success, new methods, strategies, and tactics to navigate those paths. Are you doing things just because of habit? Just because it's the way you've done it before, or it's the way someone else has done it before? Because when that's the case, many times you're probably being massively inefficient and maybe even a little stupid. So really think about that. Try to live every moment of your life and every decision you make based on what you know is right. Don't just follow every rule that's been handed down to you as a regulation. Don't follow rules just because they're rules. I mean, unless there's an extreme consequence, and even then, you're not following it because it's a rule. You're following it because it's a smart thing to do. So I hope this helps. I hope this gives you a little bit of inspiration. Go forth, break rules, destroy the status quo. Leave a comment or a review. If you're listening to this on iTunes, leave a review. Let me know what you're going to do to break rules and destroy the status quo. If you have any questions, leave those in the review. If you're listening to this on the 10X Your Gigs blog, leave a comment with your questions or what you're going to do to destroy the status quo. Put this up on your Facebook page. This applies to people in life, not just in show business. Get out there, break the rules, forge your own path, create an abundance of gigs for yourself, and I'll talk to you soon. This is Jeremy for 10xyourgigs.com. Thanks for listening.